Well, Dave moved back from California when his dad was ill with cancer, and he played in a couple groups, um, and of course with Tim King. And I actually ran into Dave at a restaurant. I can't remember the restaurant. He was out with Tim King, and he'd been back for a little bit, and he wanted someone to help sing background vocals for a jingle he was doing. And he asked me if I'd help. And so I went and did that with him. And then I was graduating from nursing school, and I asked if he'd record a background vocal of me to play during a slideshow. And I went over to Tim's house where they had a recording studio together, and we did that project. And it took a couple times, 2 or 3 times I went there. And actually, Tim King's little boy, Elia, Tim and Joni's little boy, Elia, was up in the kitchen as I was getting ready to leave, and, pay him his $50 and say thank you. And Elia looked up and said, "You know what? You two could have a little boy like me someday." And Dave blushed and was like, "Elia, you took my line away from me," because he was going to ask me to go out sometime. And I think our first date was to Burger King, actually. We had a burger at Burger King together, and then we just kept seeing each other and dating. And I have always loved bass players. So not only does Dave play keyboard, but he played bass, so, it's pretty cute. Dave and I dated probably for about a year. And actually, I don't think I ever told him that Joni King sort of gave me a heads up that Dave had talked to Tim about getting married and asking me to get married. So I kind of knew, which really wasn't quite fair to Dave. So we went to have dinner on July 4th at the Silver Dollar. And we were waiting for our burgers to come, and Dave just kind of says, "So, when are you going to marry me?" And I went, "What?" And he said, "No, when are you going to marry me?" "Is that a proposal?" He goes, "Yeah." And even though I knew, I wasn't sure if he was teasing or not, because he didn't get down on his knee or make it, he's just like, "So, when are you going to marry me?" So I had to go to work that night. He got to go to fireworks. I'm at work like going, oh my God, I'm going to get married." And Dave knew I wanted to get married, and we were like 25, 26 years old. So then we were on the older side to get married, I think. So a lot of our classmates were already married. So it was a good day.
Dave had a real strong personality. He did what he wanted to do, and Lee allowed him the freedom to do that and she understood him. That's the way I see their relationship. Dave could be a real horse's ass sometimes, and I guess Lee must have just she was able to deal with that in a way that a lot of other people wouldn't. He could also be a real sweetheart too. I know that. And he was probably sweeter to her than he was to, like, me and Chris, because we were his sisters.
When I think about Lee, so I kind of my first impression, or what comes into my mind, is always, I think, the truest form of what you think about somebody. So right when you mentioned Lee, I think of somebody that's smiling, that's supportive. When you, and I mean that in like the truest, just honest sense, because this might get me into trouble with some other musicians' wives, but I will say that, a lot of times when wives or girlfriends are on tour with you or at a show, they're almost acting like a manager, right? Like trying to insert themselves. What I remember about Lee was she was just supportive. She was there, right, all the time, and at the shows. But she was supportive. She was not, micromanaging it. And she, I think, reflected Dave. So Dave was kind of quiet. Lee's a little bit more outgoing. And I always felt when I walked into their house to be in the studio, I wasn't imposing. I think that's a great, that's something you can't force, right? I mean, when you're walking into somebody's house and they were wishing you weren't there or they would prefer that you weren't there, right? Lee was never that way. I just felt comfortable around her, and that's hard. I don't feel that way around a lot of people. Always open and supportive of the music too, but not judgmental of music. And I think a lot of people are supportive of music, but then they think it gives them the right to be judgmental. Lee is just supportive. She loves it all. And when I think of Lee too, and I picture Dave and Lee together, and I know anybody that's listening to this recording or watching the video is going to know, and knows them, is going to know what I'm talking about, is in their backyard, they had the fire pit. Whatever happened, whatever craziness happened at a show or whatever, you're always invited to the fire pit, and that is the community of music and fans and friends and family. And to me, anything you do should bring people together in a community, and I think that was kind of Lee's secret sauce to the thing, was she kind of helped bring that together, organize that together, bring the people together, and I think Dave loved that. Dave was always talking about, join us at the fire pit, do this, do that, and I don't think that a lot of relationships have that level of comfortability and true love and trust and openness, and no matter what's going on, we're just happy together. And you feel like you could be a part of that. You're not imposing, like, oh, I wish we were out, together at a restaurant alone, away from these people. Never got that way with Lee. It was always better together. And so, in the end, I guess, when I think of Lee, I think better together.
I thought Dave and Lee's relationship together was very special, and I think they were just meant for each other, because it was funny because Dave do all the cooking and Lee would go out and mow the grass. So, yeah, I think they had a very unique relationship, and I think they loved each other very much. I think they were blessed with each other, and we were all blessed with them.
Lee, and I remember this vividly, she was in our music theory class. There was a couple other gals, and they were the David Bowie people, okay? We weren't David Bowie. We were Chick Corea and all that. They were opposite musically, okay? But the thing is that Lee, I think she was more of a theater kind of person, like a thespian thing, and Dave was more of a hunker down in a room by himself and write out the notes kind of thing. So I think that opposite kind of thing attracted. But I think that Lee probably was more clear as a person than certainly more than me. I don't know as far as Dave, because when you're creative like that, there's other things on the social end that aren't all there, you know what I mean? And so Lee kind of had that there, and obviously look what she is now and how she, the hospitality and all that. And Dave had that there, but he can't take it all to the beach, you know what I mean? So I think that was there. And of course, I think Lee always admired Dave, artistically, and respected him even back then.
Later on, as we kind of reconnected, I saw how she, I wouldn't say a stabilizing factor, but she was just right in there with the kind of life a musician has, She supported him in every way and loved his humor, didn't put up with too much shit from him. They were great together. They both had this just energy and excitement for things like gardening, for instance. I went over there for the first time and saw this massive, extensive garden that they had put together. And she loved his music. She loved him. You could see that. And then at the end, she showed us what, near when he got sick, she showed us what strength was. She showed us that we could be open
and she could be open and tell everybody what was going on. A lot of times people get sick and they want to kind of stay private. Everything's private, everything's closed. But no, Lee knew that he got that energy from his friends. He got it from those that loved him, you know. And she had the blog. She had kind of always, you know, come visit. And this was refreshing. It has taught me so much about how I want to be with relatives and friends if they get sick, that it's just changed my whole way of thinking about how to help someone who's ill.
Trying to remember when she first came, how we first met her. Seems like she's always been there. So I know that I liked her from the beginning. I know that I thought she was a weird dresser. She wore a lot of purple. And these are my initial memories. But I don't remember like this introduction, a formal introduction, like at a family event or something. She just was kind of around.
Right. You know, and Lee has a a sparkling, vitality, laughs easily, comes up with ideas, and can be creative, and let's get together and do this because of this, and she enjoys group events. So I think that was a good balance with David. I mean, David could be introspective, and he could go off and do something musical, for an afternoon, and be very satisfied with just doing whatever he was doing. So I think personality-wise, they complemented each other, and she just, from the beginning, was a tremendous support to David. I'll bet, I wish David were here for this question. I'll bet there's a handful of times that he was playing that she wasn't there. Even if he was playing someplace, 3 nights in a row, she'd go to all 3 nights.
And she never got mad at him.
No, even though she probably should have.
Really. I mean, I don't ever remember. Well, she even says, I think there was only a couple of times that she was really mad at him. I think that's really something. I can't say that.
I met Lee through Dave, and she was a nurse, and I looked all over. Their wedding picture is like just the most fabulous picture of 2 people in love, and she was so avant-garde and so ahead of her time. Her dress was like teal, and she had this beautiful hat. And I looked in the basement for that picture, and you think I could find that? I wanted to bring that and have that their wedding picture that they sent, because it was just this 2 people so much in love.
Dave and Lee were a good fit because Lee was a musician too. She liked the kind of music we played, and so we went to concerts together quite a bit. The 4 of us, Joni and I, or the 5 of us, our son too, and throughout the years we had common musical interests. Also, you probably won't want to put this part in, but there's a joke about, what a professional musician is? A professional musician is a musician whose wife has a day gig. So you could cut that out, but she was, a lot of people in the band at that time, Lindsay and Ed. No, Ed wasn't in the band then, but I guess I know a lot of musicians whose wives are nurses. They have this steady job. It's a joke, but typically one person in a partnership, if they have a steady job and benefits, the other one can pursue their art more. And that's why Dave and Lee were such a good fit, because Lee said, I'm going to do this, and you keep working on your music. and he was always able to do that. Musicians don't make as much money as nurses typically in a small town. Maybe eventually they do, but anybody that has a full-time regular job and benefits is going to do better than a local musician. And so they fit together that way too.
I think they were perfect for each other. And they had such different personalities. Lee is so driven and Dave was so laid back. But the thing that meshed them together so well, I think, was that they were such good friends. I think that and probably the laughter that they shared, it was constant. They had so much fun together. It was a pleasure to be around them.
He was frickin' funny.
He was funny. And would always surprise you. Some of the things that he would come up with be hilarious. But yeah, he was pretty funny.
I met Dave through Lee. I'm a nurse, and when I moved here in 1990, Lee and I worked in recovery room together. And she's kind of a free spirit, and I tapped into that a little bit and got invited to parties that they would have. I think one of my first memories of Dave was they had a 60s mystery murder party. That's the type people that they were, and so we all had to come dressed in character, and we had our lines we had to read, and it was a barbecue, and you know, Dave and Lee, it's the party and the fire pit and the music and the people, and their friends are very eclectic, I guess. They had open hearts to anyone, from very intellectual to the person who worked in the garage and was your mechanic. Dave and Lee, they fit together. I think they brought out the best in one another. They had music in common, and I didn't know for years that Lee could sing. I didn't find that out till years and years later. And that's how they had gotten together. They knew each other from high school, but she had hired him for some music for her nursing graduation, and they reconnected at that time. And I was like, "You sing?" She's like, "Yeah, I sing," because when you think of music in their family, you think of David, for sure. But Lee, you know, being a nurse, you have to be serious and dedicated. But I think through David, Lee could tap into her free spirit, because that's how he was. So I think in that respect, he really helped her maintain a happiness. And she'd love to go out and dance to his music, and he'd play those songs. And so I think in that way, they were just a great pair, great match, yeah.